have we, reflecting back on the modules completed, are there any particular topics or areas of interest that you weren't aware of or that you've learned from these sessions? I happen to have half a dozen kind of topics that I've pre-selected, and if it happens to match what I've got here, then you're a chance to win a prize. So you can just pop down in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself, any kind of areas of interest or topics or infrastructure treatments that you've learnt over this course, just so we can have some feedback of how the modules have been received so far.
Yes, Wally did get sorted last week. So if you didn't quite, sorry, Max, just there was a bit of Ken went off script, I think, and then the Wally's got messed up. So we have sorted Wally. So don't stress if you didn't get 100% on your Wally question for last week. I will magically fix that one in the background. It's good to get the admin out of the way. So what we're looking for, Max, is just a bit of highlights or what things maybe were you not aware of or that you got out of the course over the last couple of weeks. And we've got some responses in already. Roadside and median barriers, conflict points at intersections, see-through effect. Did quite a bit on the see-through effect. But you said you've got about half a dozen things on there, don't you?
I do, that's right. I've got a random selection of topics, not necessarily the most pertinent or the most salient, but just ones that we happen to grab out of the content over the last few modules. So yeah, just wanted to hear exactly what participants have gleaned from the last couple sessions. Cycling greats, very good.
You've got your bicycle there in the background,
yeah,
Max. You're a keen cyclist.
Pet peeve of mine, cycling greats, that's for sure.
Does it grind your gears?
Yeah, it grinds my gears, so to speak, yeah.
So Sean's telling us about race platforms are good too. They went to a local presentation on their use in Hamilton and the success they are having. So yeah, certainly I think I'd almost say New Zealand's ahead of the pack in terms of raised platforms, doing some good work there. So that's good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Quite innovative space that NZ is working within. We tend to be following suit a little bit over here in Oz, looking across the ditch and seeing what you're doing and thinking, oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, I've seen a question come through. Just as an auditor, is there a particular issue or something you look at first that is a common problem, comes up regularly across most projects you try and pay attention to? Good question. It would certainly depend on what type of location you are auditing. So for instance, if you were in the rural environments, one that regularly comes up that was already mentioned there was that see-through effect, particularly, if it's cross intersections. If you're ever in rural environments as well, speed, just the speeds that we are permitted to travel within those locations is regularly an audit finding. If we're thinking within urban environments, a lot of the time, so if we're thinking like signalized intersections, for instance, they rely on motorists being compliant and, acknowledging that there's a red light and slowing down. So it relies on human behavior, which we know humans will make mistakes. So even though signalized intersections do offer an improved level of safety from an uncontrolled intersection, it's still not getting us towards that safe system, towards zero worlds, where we have to cater for people making mistakes. So that's another regular kind of audit finding that pops up within urban environments. But in terms of, is there, commonly one audit finding that we can kind of just copy and paste in every type of scenario? Not really, because we do look at it and start from fresh every time we conduct road safety audits or say system audits. Good question though. So we've had lots of answers there come through, Kathy. I might just share my screen and you can see my presentation there, Kathy. Fantastic. So those are the 6 kind of topics that we put together. And one of the ones that was mentioned there was the cycling grates. So we'll give a prize out to whoever mentioned that one there. And yeah, just a few of the other topics, RSA being a proactive measure, dynamic visual obstruction or masking, as it's commonly referred to as, pedestrian desire lines, the structure of an RSA. It is formulaic. There's a template available on the NZTA website. Severity of crashes as well. All right, any further questions there before I get stuck into the legal side of business, Kathy?
Sure is, Max. When you're doing an audit of a concept or preliminary design that doesn't have signage, markings, etc., do you assume and state as such in the report that the designers will provide them adequately as the design progresses, or do you highlight and guide the design? Great question, Erin. You're getting a prize.
That's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
And something that actually regularly does come up. So when you are doing auditing concept designs, the designer may very well not put in, the specifics of what type of signs that they're going to be implementing, because that would be presumably picked up at later design stages, or it may just be indicatively put, we'll put in pedestrian crossing signs here and give way, etc. As an auditor, you tend to audit what is available. So you tend to just audit, the design that you've been given. You can make the assumption that that will be picked up in further design stages. So if there was another audit to occur in detailed design, for instance, and there are any issues with the signing scheme, that would get picked up then. But the way that we tend to do it, and we would recommend, is just adding a note within your audit table or within the report itself, just to say the auditors note that no signing information has been provided at this stage, and have assumed that this detail will be picked up in further design stages. So just to cover yourself off that, hey, we acknowledge that it hasn't been done yet, but odds are it's going to get picked up as the design progresses. So we tend to just kind of cover ourselves and just say we didn't notice anything, but we assume it's going to get picked up. We can also be a little bit helpful and say, please refer to the relevant standard to help make or guide that decision making. But it's not necessarily a requirement to point that out. All right, I'll turn off my heater because I'm roasting in here now, but I might get started with today's presentation, which is the administration, the legal kind of aspects of conducting a road safety audit or safe system audit, and accreditation. The accreditation will predominantly be focused on Victoria, South Australia, NT, Queensland, New Zealand, and also New South Wales. So upon completion of this course, you will be eligible for accreditation, and we'll show you exactly what that means and how you can achieve that. So if you are interested in, getting your name on an official qualification list, this is what this presentation will cover. Of course, given the way that we work, each kind of jurisdiction has their own way of, saying that this is an accredited road safety auditor or an accredited senior road safety auditor. We have not achieved one universal means to categorize this. So each state and jurisdiction does it differently. There is an Austroads project undergoing at the moment, which is trying to harmonize all of this, but it's proving very difficult because I'll get into the reasons in a few slides times, but we'll show the accreditation registers that are available for everyone within New Zealand upon completion of this course, and also just have a quick chat about legal risks, which I find really, really interesting. So I'll get stuck into that first. And I will start with this big disclaimer in that I have an engineering degree. I do not have a law degree. And this is just general advice. So please don't take what I'm saying as legal advice. I'm not authorized to do so. However, over the years working within this space, come across a few instances where road safety audits have gone through the court systems, and understand, I suppose, the importance of the process and how this may impact you and how this may influence your decisions as you are conducting a safe system audit. So the first aspect of this legal topic that we're going through is we'll focus on, I suppose, our side of the situation, the scenario, which is possible issues for auditors. So if we are conducting audits, few things we need to be aware of. We want to stay away from something that is client focused. An example of that could be if there was I'll just say developer. Developers usually a pretty good one to use within this space, because developers are generally focused on delivering their products. They've got a million different other things to worry about. They don't generally have traffic engineering, road safety experience or appetite. And so they would do, as a general kind of statement, bare minimum to be able to achieve all the paperwork, and get their sign off from the road controlling authority. Once they've got the permit to build whatever they want to build, that's them set up. So we'll take the example of a developer, and let's say they want to build a new hardware store chain all over New Zealand. They've picked 60 different sites, and they want to start buying land and start just start building their site. So they're going through this process, and they've identified they need to undertake safe system audits as part of any of their development work, because the sites are adjacent arterial roads, and that's where they want traffic to be turning in to and from. And the client, which is the developer in this instance, would perhaps go out to market and say, are there any road safety auditors or safe system auditors that are interested in conducting this project? And they may pick one site, and they say, if you make this really straightforward for me, there's about 60 other sites that I can give you. Okay. So you can see there's definitely a conflict of interest there in if a developer is saying to an auditor, try and make sure that you don't pick up on anything too risky or anything that we have to act on, because that's going to cause me issues. So we've broadly categorized that as a client-focused audit. What we want to ensure is that we are achieving our road safety audits with independence. So we are not, part of the team that's going to be developing it, and we're not necessarily influenced by whatever is being recommended. So keep that in mind if you are ever within that position, making sure that you've got transparency there, and yes, you're not acting in a means that could suggest any collusion or anything like that. An inadequate brief. So this is once again from the perspective of the auditor. So you may be given a project brief from a client which says, can you please conduct an audit on the existing conditions for Hamilton? Full stop. And as an auditor, it would be advised to be asking questions. Well, is there a particular, section of Hamilton? Is it the outskirts of Hamilton? Is it a particular intersection? Or is it the whole township or city? Because that is obviously going to greatly influence the scope of work. So if there is an inadequate brief, just as an auditor, trying to have that conversation early on with the client to help define the scope of the project. Otherwise, if that were to just progress and the auditor takes one opinion of what auditing Hamilton means, and then the client is happy to, just take that as that's what they've decided. If that were to ever get to the legal realm and that was ever argued in court, lawyers would have a field day because there is absolutely no scope there whatsoever. It was professional judgment, you could say, that has helped influence that. But there's just no clarity around exactly what that auditor was meant to be investigating. So ensuring that the briefs are well articulated is also a responsibility of the auditor or the person receiving it. Misleading qualifications or experience, that's pretty self-explanatory. We can't go around saying that we got 10 years experience within pavement construction if we've never built a road. That's kind of across the board. You can't say that you've got any qualifications that you don't have, so nothing too surprising there. Not following the correct process. Now, this one is a little bit interesting because it can differ if you are on the client side or the auditor, but if your client has stated, we want you to do a safe system audit at this particular intersection, we only want the daytime audit though, because we know there's no pedestrian demand at nighttime, or it's a rural location and we want you to only focus on daytime conditions. Okay, so if the client has said it's day only, then you are able to basically fulfill their brief, which is saying, okay, well, it's a departure from the Austroads guides to say that a day and night is required, but it has been provided by the client. So you are able to follow that project brief because that's your role as an auditor. However, if you took it upon yourself as an auditor to make that decision, I don't think the nighttime is required because it's just not enough demand there and I'm not going to achieve anything, then you are basically assuming that risk. So if it's been confirmed by the client and it's within the brief, you're able to deliver that. If you are to make that decision yourself as an auditor, and even if you were to write that within the report, once again, you would be departing from the guidelines, which means you could be causing yourself some issues. And I should also say it's unlikely that you yourself would be the one within court trying to, trying to argue for or against your particular audit report. It's more a reflection of your organization. So they would be liable within, even if it was your report, it goes higher up to your organization. So that also may not have personal consequences, but it could affect the way that you are, doing your business as a company. This reasonable assessment is regularly used within the legal sphere, and as you can imagine, there's a degree of subjectivity about what reasonable means. The way it is generally defined is, well, what would your peers and colleagues suggest to be a reasonable assessment? So for instance, if you were auditing a design and you happen to miss a very high risk article of the design, and you didn't include that within your safe system audit report, and then there happened to be, you know, death or serious injury because of that omission, that could potentially be picked up as, well, it would be reasonable for a road safety auditor to have picked that up. So there is some type of, you know, responsibility as auditors that it is a requirement to be able to read the plans with confidence and understand what's going on and what's being proposed, and to be able to review the risks. So it is, I suppose, a little bit of pressure to make sure that you are picking up on all the details. However, I'll put a little caveat in there, in that it's likely that the most significant design risks would be very obvious that you would just pick up immediately. B, the design team themselves would pick it up. So there's a little bit of, you know, partnership there. It's not necessarily solely the responsibility of a road safety auditor to be like, hey, there's a utility pole that hasn't been removed that's now going to be in the middle of an intersection kind of thing. Like, it's likely that would also get picked up by the design team. So there is a means of sharing that risk there. But that reasonable assessment does come up quite often within the legal space. I'll now go to the other side of conducting the road safety audit and think about things from the client's perspective. So if you are issuing, you know, consultants or whoever it is to conduct a road safety audit, a few things that you should be mindful of. I've already touched on this, but making sure that you're writing a brief that is explicit, that is not open to interpretation, that is very clear what you want audited, what time of day is it, you know, maybe it's during school hours, for instance, that you're most interested in, putting that within the brief. So very clear that responsibility lies on the client. Requesting recommendations. I think that all just ties in with this duty to consider recommendations. So once you receive the report from a road safety auditor, there'll be, you know, the issues that have been found with the design or the existing conditions, and there'll be recommendations associated with each of those risks identified. It's not a client's responsibility to just sign off each of those recommendations and be like, yep, we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that. We acknowledge that clients are working within constrained budgets, constrained sites. So auditors may be recommending things that are not feasible. However, we do like to see clients against each recommendation saying, yep, we accept that. No, we are unable to accept that due to this reason. And it could just be like due to there's no budget available for implementing an interchange, or defer, so passing that on. You could also reject it with the little caveat to say, at this stage, we don't have money to implement an interchange, but we will look to you know, put $5 million to develop a business case in the next financial year or something like that. So it's a really good way of just keeping the accountability. So it's not just a report that an auditor has said and here's some recommendations, but keeping the clients as part of the process of either accepting the findings and accepting the mitigating measures. The prioritization thing is actually quite clear within a road safety audit report, because the way that your audit findings are categorized are, high or medium or low. So you've got your risks there that are basically categorized by an independent auditor. And that's a pretty good way to then be able to say, well, these are the areas that I really need to focus on, my high risks, because they are the areas where there's likely to be more of a chance of death or serious injury. And so if I'm going to be putting money into any of these risks identified, you'd probably be focusing on there. So pretty good way to be able to identify how to prioritize your investment. And once again, reasonable process. It can be viewed from both the auditor side and the client side. You as a client, if you have reasonably done your job to ensure that the auditor has all the information that they need to be able to conduct a fair road safety audit and not withholding any information, I suppose is the key there. I might go back to the developer scenario there. So if you were a developer and you happen to know at the site that you are proposing to build your new, what did I call it before? Warehouse or whatever. If you happen to know at that location that, it's a semi-rural location, but there is a school pickup, not a formalized school pickup, but just one of those ones at the side of the road that happens to pick up a half a dozen kids every day, and it's not formalized at all. It would be reasonable for you as a client to mention that to an audit team, because the auditor may not be able to know, unless they were at those pickup times, that there is an actual bus stop there, but there's no actual bus sign or indented bus bay or anything like that. So being open with your auditors about the information that you've got would be a reasonable thing to be able to expect. Any questions so far, Kathy, on the legal aspects or any of the content so far?
No, Max, we're all good. No questions at the moment.
Fabulous. Okay, that's good to hear. I'll get stuck into the accreditation process across various jurisdictions. So within Victoria, you are able to apply as New Zealanders and sit on the Victorian Road Safety Auditor register. We have 2 tiers, which is kind of seen across the board, which is like an entry level or a road safety auditor, and then a senior road safety auditor. Within Victoria, we've said you don't need any experience within road safety years-wise to be able to get started, because the philosophy within Victoria was, let's just try and get as many road safety auditors, as many people through this training or similar, where they've actually learnt about the safe system, they've learnt about the whole process and what it involves. That was kind of the most important part of things. So if you look at the Victorian Road Safety Audit Register, there's hundreds and hundreds of names, many of which have probably never conducted a road safety audit. They've just got their name on there. Some see that as a weakness in the system, in that it's, just encouraging anyone to get on board, but they still do have to demonstrate that they've completed a relevant course within the road safety auditing space. There's a few different schools of thought within there. I won't spend too much time on that, but Queensland says a minimum of 5 years even to be a road safety auditor. You also need to demonstrate that you are maintaining your skill set, so what's just been referred to as maintenance there. So participating in one audit per year generally seems to be the industry standard, and you do need to supply evidence of that to the register. So every year you'll get sent an email saying, have you done an audit lately? And got to show them the audit that you're involved in, and then that's how you maintain your status as a senior road safety auditor. Now, there is a bit of a, I suppose, idea that a road safety auditor is perhaps someone more junior, and a senior road safety auditor is perhaps someone with, more experience or a bit older in age, but it depends on which jurisdiction you're in, as mentioned, because senior road safety auditors may have 5 years experience, or they have, 40 years experience. It depends on the type of engineer that you're working with, I suppose. Within each of the registers, you are required to demonstrate that you have attended a road safety audit course. This certificate that you will receive upon completion of the Safe System Solutions Road Safety Audit course will give you access to Victoria's, New South Wales, South Australia, NT, TAS, all those ones. The one that it doesn't is Western Australia. Western Australia have their own way of implementing road safety audits and maintaining their register. Theirs is a lot more, what's the word? I was going to say pedantic, but the way that they manage it is a lot more involved. As an example, the consultants that are listed as road safety auditors within Western Australia, I wouldn't say have a monopoly, but they have a really strong demand because there's few and far between. As an example of that, Ken Beer, our principal engineer, when he was on the Western Australian road safety auditor list, he isn't anymore, just because of the maintenance issues that they have over there. But anyway, Ken was regularly sought. We obviously live on the east coast of Australia. Ken was regularly sought to provide road safety audits over in Western Australia. They would fly him over. They would put him in accommodation for 2 or 3 nights, organize all the logistics, get him the car, travel, and all that kind of stuff. They'd pay for all of that because they would say, Ken, you're able to do this road safety audit within 3 weeks, whereas if I go through locals within the area, they're giving me quotes that are more than the costs that you're providing, including all of that travel and accommodation, and they have a turnaround period of 2 to 3 months. So the way that Western Australia have done it means that, yes, the names that you see on their register are exemplary and they fully understand the road safety audit process, and they're absolutely going to be able to pick up on the risks and write a fantastic report. But because it is so niche and they've made it difficult to become on that list, it's given them the issue of being able to actually conduct road safety audits is challenging because the market is just not there. So there's kind of 2 ends of the spectrum there, with Victoria being very open and just like attend the course and just put your name on the list. WA is attend the course, provide, your CV, make sure that that's matches what they require. Do online learning as well, pass those quizzes, make sure that's all up to scratch. There's other little affiliate things that you are required to do within WA. And in that circumstance, it's much harder. So they've got a much smaller market. So 2 different ends of the spectrum there. I'll let you decide what you think is the right way to go about it. Kathy.
Thanks, Max. Yeah, it's challenging to strike a good balance, isn't it? Tell us, who checks the accreditation register and that the maintenance audits are kept up to date?
So depending on which jurisdiction you're in, it will depend on that. Within Victoria, there's a company ARB, they look after it. Basically, they just have a massive record of it all, of everyone that goes through, and they have a, an automated system whereby every year where they require that maintenance update, they'll just send out an automated message to that contacts, and that's just how it's maintained. Other jurisdictions, they manage it, they may manage it in-house, but yeah, it will depend on which jurisdiction you're in.
And we also had a comment from Ari about another matter that sometimes arises for post-construction or pre-implementation audits, where often works are not fully complete. Any outstanding works and timeframe to complete needs to be flagged by the client to the auditor.
Very good. No, that's a very relevant point. Yep. And just going back to that, what would be reasonable for you as a client to provide the auditor? Well, giving them all the information saying, well, this splitter island hasn't been constructed yet, so just a heads up while you're out there on site, you won't see that basically. So making sure that communication is transparent. Yeah.
Good one. That's all the questions for the moment, Max. Thanks.
Fantastic. Senior road safety auditor, 5 years experience, and also demonstration of 5 road safety audits undertaken with a senior road safety auditor. I'll show you how to get on the Victorian one. As I mentioned, this one is the easiest one to get onto, and it's just an excellent way to get your name out there and, potentially get involved within road safety audits. So this is the website, thersa.com.au. It looks a little bit like this. As I mentioned, this is managed by ARB Group. First thing that you do when you log into the website is you'll get this wonderful disclaimer, and it's basically saying that ARB they're not certifying any of the auditors here. They're not saying the auditors are any good. They're just saying that they have met the competency requirements to achieve the road safety audit status. So they're basically just saying, yep, they've ticked the box, and that means they can be on this list, but we are not taking any responsibility for what the service that they provide. So you just click on agree to continue there, and you'll get into homepage here. This is the button that you'll be after. So you click on register for auditor accreditation. Most of you will most likely be clicking on the first dot point there, which is register for a road safety auditor. Once you've got more experience, you're able to click on register for senior road safety auditor. You'll fill in all your details. You are able to hide any of the information that you don't want the public to see. So, your phone number, for instance, or your organization, you can hide that so that's not publicly available. Once you've logged all of that in, you're able to log on to the registered users. Oh, there's a little friend there. And that is basically the database for anyone that's actually registered on this system. I don't know why that's happening again. Oh yeah, there's also an ability to search for an auditor. So if you are conducting a project, basically seeing who you could get in touch with, you're able to put in either someone's name or the company they work for, or you can just say, look, I'm doing a cycle audits and it is a detailed design stage. So you can just tick that box there, and then it'll tell you the list of auditors that have that experience. The little caveat there is the individual themselves are the ones that fill in this table here. So an individual may think that, yeah, I can do all of those audits. I can do every stage, and I know everything to do with all of those topics. So there's a little bit of a risk there where if you're filtering through this, that you've just got someone that's very confident in their abilities, but not necessarily able to demonstrate their competence. Once you search through the list, you just get, hundreds of names that could potentially help you within the scope. There's Ken Beer. If you click on Ken Beer, it'll just tell you the accreditation level. He's a senior road safety auditor. It's an active qualification. Obviously, just the business details if you want to get in touch. They require information from the CV just to demonstrate that you've worked within the space if you're a senior road safety auditor. And this is what Ken has nominated as his levels of expertise. You'll note the other one has not been ticked in. Other was originally put in there because this is, maybe Kathy will know, I'm going to say this is like 15 years old, this register. And the other category was originally put in there because just acknowledging that this is a changing space that we're working with, or an evolving space. And it was thought maybe we'll have to put in, autonomous vehicle audits one day. So other has just been put in there, but you can't actually select it. So bit of a random thing, but in case you're wondering why it's there. And Ken also acknowledges that he is not really an expert within traffic management plans, and so hasn't nominated himself, for that type of work. This is just any locations that you feel comfortable working within. So if you happen to only want projects on one side of the state, the eastern side, then you can just select that. As mentioned, you do require providing regular updates to show that you're maintaining your skills for road safety audits. So this is just a list of the previous audits that Ken has completed. And also on there is the actual certificate to demonstrate that you have completed a road safety audit course. So you'll need to provide that as part of your registration as well. So that is how to register within Victoria. South Australia has a very similar setup, so nothing too out of the ordinary. bpti.sa.gov.au. You may be asking, why am I telling you about this for New Zealand? Well, New Zealand doesn't have a accreditation list. So this is just a way for you to gain exposure on other formalized lists. Similar kind of process. It's just done through a form though, instead of being an online thing. So you click on the form and you fill it in and then send it off, and then they review the information. Queensland, or TMR, they also have their own list up there. I won't get into the details of this one. New South Wales really recently became on their list of recognised courses, even though we've been doing this course for 10 years or something like that, just because they always wanted things done within New South Wales. But rest assured that this course is now recognised on the New South Wales portal as well. So once you get the certificate, you're able to log into this website and get your name signed up there too. That was the end of the discussion regarding the accreditation process. So I might just check into Kathy to make sure I haven't missed anything so far.
Thanks, Max. As there is no accreditation or register in New Zealand, do clients, for example, Waka Kotahi, have auditor training experience requirements? Great question.
Yeah, right. I've certainly seen within tenders and requests for quotes that have come out within Waka Kotahi to demonstrate how you are able to confirm your skill set. The way that we do it, obviously within Safe System Solutions, is to say, well, we're on the register for Victoria, New South Wales. These are actual bodies that are saying we certify you as a road safety auditor. So that's how we demonstrate it, which I think is a pretty strong way to do it. Another way you could do it potentially would be just to provide your CV and show that you've attended, X amount of training within this space. You've worked within the space for however many years. So I haven't seen a particular requirement to say this is exactly the type of answer that we're looking for within NZ, but I would expect within the future for NZ to have their own list. And whether that's the really super cozy, relaxing list that Victoria's adopted or a very stringent list that WA has remains to be seen. The Safe System Audit guidelines that you will all be required to follow is currently, well, because it's been recently released, they are asking all people working within that space to offer any suggestions or any recommendations. So if you found the register to be something that would really benefit New Zealand practitioners, that's something perhaps you could be recommending. But also as you go through the process, there's other things that you might find could be more efficient or could be perhaps removed from the scope of a safe system audit. So keep that in mind. Feel free to flick through. I haven't got the exact email details that you need, but there's a contact detail on the website for any suggestions to improve that process.
Yeah, absolutely, Max. And we've just had a comment from Ari saying current statement in the Waka Kotahi SSA document is that auditors are expected to have attended SSA course such as this one, or this. I hope you mean Ari SSA as in Safe System Audit, or the Safe System workshops run by Waka Kotahi. So, look, I think. The Safe System Engineering workshops that are the week-long events in New Zealand that are kind of the renown, that's the training you do. I know there's not as many opportunities for that. Waka Kotahi's obviously invested a lot in providing subsidy to this particular training and has undertaken quite a bit of training over the last couple of years. So I think that, definitely watch this space in terms of what happens there and how they adopt it. But it's good. Okay. Thanks, Max.
Get stuck into the next part and then we'll have a little break.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the breakout rooms. Okay. So maybe another 5 minutes and then we'll have a little break. Okay.
Terrific.
So the next part of today's module is to actually go through an example audit, basically, and we'll break you up into little teams, and in your breakout rooms you'll be able to nominate a scribe, so someone that will actually write down the audit finding, risk rate it as well, so what would the likelihood and severity be and the overall level of risk. We'll probably give you 20 minutes within the breakout room to have that discussion. Ideally, we would want a minimum of 1 audit finding and a maximum of 2, which is pretty narrow margin there. We don't really need to see, lots and lots of different audit findings that are not, have not been really written up and well thought through and articulated. We'd rather see, just 1 or 2 really, really well thought out answers. So then when you can come back into this main group, we'll get one person from each breakout room to have a discussion around the audit findings. So you'll need to nominate a scribe, someone that writes it down, and nominate a speaker as well, so someone who actually hosts that conversation. The design that we will be looking at, this is available on the learning management system. So you'll be able to zoom it in. Perhaps when you get into your breakout group, you can have one person that shares their screen and shows this image. But just as an overview, what's happening here, this is a real site. We haven't made this design ourselves, so this is, you know, something that's genuinely being considered. The green, apologies for anyone that is colorblind, but that kind of green line marking is existing conditions. So if you have a look right in the middle of this intersection, you can see there's actually like a very funny roundabout shape there. So there's an existing roundabout at this site, and the black line marking is what is being proposed. And what is being proposed is a signalized intersection. Okay. So this project proposes to remove the existing roundabout and construct a signalized intersection. We've also given just the sheets that lead up to this intersection. So that's obviously an approach of both of the legs, in case you're interested in reviewing those designs as well. We also have this handy little cheat sheet because we thought about flying you all out and getting you on sites and organizing logistics to conduct a site inspection, but we thought it might be a little bit easier to provide this in a digital format. So all of these little cameras here are actual 360-degree videos of where that location is. So I'm just going to pick number 5, for instance, and it will take you to a YouTube clip of a video at that location. So this is the actual roundabout, and you can just drag your mouse around and you'll be able to see how that environment looks. So that might influence your decisions on how to risk rate certain things. So we've given you that image there, just so if you want to have a click on how things look out on site, feel free to do that. The speed is always an important consideration. So you can see there's a 70 on kind of the east-west leg of this location. There's a 60 on the southern leg, and there's a 50 on the northern leg. So I'll just reiterate a few things. What we're going to do is we're going to have a 5-minute break, and then I'll turn my camera back on, and that will be the time that we all break you out into little groups. Within your group, you'll need to nominate a scribe. So you'll need to nominate someone that's going to write down an audit finding. You'll be auditing the design, not the existing condition. So you won't be auditing this site that we're seeing on this screen. It's the actual design that you'll be auditing. So not taking into consideration how things currently are, but how things will look in the future. Unless there's existing things that are not going to be rectified with this proposed design. That's probably the only caveat I'll add there. But focus on this design and try and pick up any risks, and then writing those down. We'll give you 20 minutes in breakout rooms. We'll come back together as a group, and then one by one, we'll go around and have a bit of a discussion around the risks that you've picked up. Anything I missed there, Kathy?
That's marvelous, Max. Thank you very much. Yes, what I'm going to do is pop into the chat 2 documents. One is a Word document, which is where your scribe can write that audit finding in, and it's a templated one. And the other one is the design exercise. So I'll pop that into the chat if you want to have a look at it during the break. Otherwise, we'll catch you in 5 minutes. Thanks. Max, this is the audience participation component of the training. So yes, let's do it.
Let's give it a go. I also may pop into various rooms just to say hello and guide you along the audit if you need. But I'll just be a fly on the wall. If you don't want my opinion, that's also fine.
Okay, so should we just reiterate what we're doing? So you'll go into a breakout room. We're creating 4 breakout rooms, so there'll be about 7 or 8 people per room. In the chat, there is a Word document, which is your templated where you write your audit finding. So that's what we're looking for, isn't it? We're looking for one audit finding on the proposed design. Yes?
Huh.
Great. And we're allowing about 20 minutes, so at the most. But if you finish early, let us know. And then we'll all come back together and we'll have someone from each group present or, talk us through their audit finding. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much. Have you put the thing in the chat yet? Because mine, I can't see it on mine.
Yes, I have. But
has everyone else seen it?
No, they haven't. The only person who's seen it is Iris, who told me she had to leave. So unfortunately, what happened there was I sent her the documents that she doesn't need because she had to leave. But that's not, don't get any ideas there, anyone else? So I've just popped the Word document in now. Are you seeing that one?
Yep.
Great, thank you. And the other one as well. It should have come through.
Thank you very much.
All right. So you should get a pop-up saying go and join a breakout room. And you just off you go. And obviously you'll need to turn on your unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you'd like. Everyone's off they go. This is great. Thank you.
That's terrific. Excellent. Oh, well, thanks, everyone. I heard lots of good discussions in the breakout rooms and, yeah, just a variety of different risks coming through. So I might just get the ball rolling and open up to room number 1. If you wanted to select your presenter and we can have a chat through your RSA findings. I suppose, does everyone know what room number they were?
No.
Okay. So room number 1.
Yes, Chris.
Was Chris?
Yeah, we were room number 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you're happy to speak through it, Juliana?
I think Chris is going to do it.
Chrissy, on mute. Chrissy, on mute.
Oh, there we go. Okay. We can see your
Maybe you
screen,
have to do it.
Chris.
There you go.
There you go.
There.
Sorry, it wasn't unmuting on my little thing,
Huh.
but yes, I was going to speak if it would let me. So what jumped out to us was the pedestrian crossings at the slip lanes, particularly the sight lines for crossing pedestrians. So we thought that pedestrians crossing would have 4 sight lines for approaching traffic, particularly the approach circled in the image below. The reasons for that was the location of the property boundary, which we assumed would have a fence, and also the geometry of the road. The risk factors were the high approach speed, so it was 70 kilometers per hour. And the type of crash we thought that would result would be a pedestrian versus car crash, which would have high severity. We rated this as serious. It's quite easy to achieve that serious category if these crashes involving pedestrians at high speeds. And our recommendations would be to raise the pedestrian crossing to reduce the speed of approaching vehicles and to assess the sight lines against Oz roads and potentially purchase the corner property or do other methods to improve the sight lines.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Team number one, thanks for getting stuck straight into it. So one of the questions I had there was just regarding the speed that you nominated was the 70 kilometre per hour speed zone, which is understandable because that's the operating environment. I'd probably just add the caveat there that given the tight angle of the slip lane, it's likely that operating speeds would be lower because it would be, you'd have to significantly slow down to be able to turn left at that location. But I think it's reasonable to say that it's still likely to result in a pretty significant crash, death or serious injury. Like it would still be higher than the 30 kilometre per hour speed, or possible to turn at that speed, which means what you've stated there seems completely reasonable. It just, you could just add a little sentence in there. It's likely that operating speeds may be lower. I thought the risk itself was well articulated. One thing that I really like to see with all of the findings is really explicitly state which crash type you're concerned about. And you did mention that it was pedestrians crossing over being struck by a vehicle. So even though it can be at times obvious, like if you're talking about a pedestrian crossing, then presumably that's the crash you're worried about, but it's very good practice just to be explicit and to write that down. So well done to your group. And Chris, I believe we'll give you a prize for putting your hand up and getting involved in the presentation. Anyone else from that group wanted to contribute anything or? No, happy to move on. Okay, we'll go to the second meeting room.
So group 2 was Brent, David, Erin, Martin, Samson, Shamar, Sean, and Sue. Who is talking from your group?
Sean here. I wrote it down, so I'm probably best to try and read my own writing.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean.
Do I share video? Cool. So we started identifying multiple issues until Max in the last 5 minutes said just focus on one. So we've done as best we can. We've picked some, I don't know, it's the best kind of terminology for it, but there's left turn confusion, and it's, I'm not sure, am I sharing screen? I'm not, am I? Sorry,
I've got mine up, so I'm happy to annotate as you talk.
This will stop. I'll try this. Is that sharing?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Left turn confusion. So here at Walker's Road or whatever, there's two ways to access Walker's Road, and there doesn't seem to be any clear guidance on which entry vehicles should be using. And this first location here also combines with the end of the left-hand through lane that comes from the other side of Canterbury Road. So we thought that you might have vehicles from the middle lane deciding to make a decision to try and access Walker's Road or what might be some parking area here. And that combined with any vehicles in the left-hand lane that are wishing to merge into the middle lane and continue on along Walker's Road, Canterbury eastbound. So yeah, we thought that would contribute to a number of sideswipe crashes, which would be significant for motorcyclists if they were one of the vehicles hit in the sideswipe. So that's why our rating, we thought crashes were very likely here, and that the death or serious injury was serious injury could occur.
Yep.
So that gave us a, hang on, didn't quite change that in time. Where does that put us on the matrix? Serious, yeah, it's serious. Yep, I got that right. So serious incident. As per recommendations, because we wasted time at the start identifying a few issues, we ran out of time to get to recommendations. So that thing, the part there in yellow about removing that access point, I guess, is potentially a solution, although it might make this what this parking area is intended for redundant, be quite difficult to access it, I guess, and maneuver if you only come in from the second entry point. So we didn't discuss that as a team. But
That's okay. You've identified the risk and you've done a good job. Once again, it's great to see that you've clearly explained the crash type, which is the side swipe crashes that you're worried about there. I like that you've also mentioned a particular road user. If motorcyclists were within this area, they're significantly at risk as they're more vulnerable. So I agree with your risk rating that you've done there, being a serious type of injury if that were to occur. Any other questions? Sorry, any other comments from group number 2? Good on you, Sean. Thanks very much. We'll move straight on to group number 3, please.
In group 3, we had Anne-Marie, Asul, Bridget, Janko, Massia, Queenie, Ravi, and the mysterious admin.
Ethel's going to share, but I was going to talk, but we hadn't actually talked about, hadn't talked about who was going to do that. So yeah, we had the same as the first group.
Yep.
We thought all of the pedestrian crossings on the slip lanes were an issue. So we've written it from that perspective, that there's high vehicle speeds on the approach to the crossings due to the slip lane alignments, and that the alignment causes limited visibility for pedestrians crossing. Mentioned that the crash type would be vehicle versus pedestrian crashes. And we talked about the high vehicle speeds being a risk factor, just in general, I guess. And then we started talking about some recommendations around raising the zebras onto platforms to get to safe system speeds. And the probability rating, we thought the crashes are likely, and the severity rating would be fatal. So it comes out with an overall serious rating. So very similar to group 1, as I said.
One of the changes that I note with this group's thinking was you've kind of put all the slip lanes together and said all of those are at risk, whereas the first group focused on the southeast quadrants.
Mm-hmm.
Both have their merits. So I agree that all of the slip lanes kind of have that risk. Maybe not in this design, but in other designs, there may be riskier sections. So for instance, the approaches that have the higher speed, where you're going at 70 kilometers per hour and then entering the slip lane, it'd be reasonable to say, well, maybe I'm going to split those ones up because those two are similar. They've got the higher speeds and they've got a difficult sight distance issues and things like that. So those ones might have a higher risk rating. And then you could copy and paste the exact same audit finding, but just mention the other two quadrants, which were at lower speeds, and it may not be as high of a risk. But there's no real right or wrong way to do that. I think the way that you've done it is just, capturing it at all quadrants, and maybe you've taken the worst case scenario and risk rated that, which is completely fine. But another great example, and interesting to see that two different groups have come up with the same issue in the design. So thanks, Anne-Marie.
Okay.
The final group number 4, if you wanted to talk through your audit finding.
Yeah, hi all. That'll be me. It's Ari. Don't get the joy of seeing me on video, which is probably good for all. I've just got my good old desktop running at the moment, but hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
Coming through loud and clear. Go for it.
Cool. Now, I didn't scribe, but if our scribe is able to share the screen, awesome. Brilliant.
Oh, that's my screen, but
Yeah,
if
that's
the slide
yours.
wants to take over. Oh, I'm happy to annotate the slide as you go.
Yeah,
Ari, whatever works.
that's fine, Max. That screen there. Oh no, Hillary's onto it.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Thanks, Hillary. Cool. Right. So the issue that jumped out at us was these on-road bus stops. Hopefully that's what they are. Those two there aren't called up in the drawing, but there's one just further to the right hand side, which identifies as an on-road bus stop. And we've flagged a potential issue, just given that location, particularly the one that's on the eastbound leg of the bus stop on Canterbury Road. That's directly in line with traffic coming through in the inside lane on Canterbury Road, and also traffic exiting on the slip lane turning left out of Montrose Road. So there's a risk there of both rear end and side swipe crashes from those respective vehicle movements, and potentially risk factors would be the vehicles turning left out of Montrose. That's a fairly high angle slip, so it doesn't slow them down considerably, and that traffic there will be focused. The drivers in those vehicles will be looking to their right hand side, which is through traffic on Canterbury that they're looking to give way to, and potentially not looking left to see if there's a bus parked right in the middle of the lane they're turning into. So we believe there's a reasonably high probability of crashes. As I said, both those rear end and side swipe type crashes occurring. Although it's an Australian job, we did note that there is Waka Kotahi guidance, a public transport design guidance, which talks about best practice for bus stop location design guidance in general. So we'd refer the design to that. But the key thing is that the designer needs to consider the design and location of the bus stops, just to ensure that they're clear of that potentially what could be fast moving traffic.
Fantastic. And I noted within the description you've got there, you mentioned the size of the bus being a large vehicle, increasing the level of severity, which I think is a really sensible thing to be mentioning, similar to Group 2 regarding the motorcycle being a more vulnerable road user within that space, but actually contextualizing your users within that area. So because you've got heavy masses, going to result in more significant trauma for any crashes that do occur there. I think that's a really good finding. I think the way that you've phrased it is very well aligned with how we'd like to see road safety audit findings. So that's great to see. One of the things that stuck out to me was there's two ways I suppose you could have done this, which is you mentioned the awkward slip entry angle and how that increases the risk of a colliding with the bus that's stopped there, which is completely valid. So you basically said the risk is the bus stop being there, the slip entry angle increases the chance of that happening. You could have also worded it the other way of saying the risk is the slip entry angle, and what makes it even higher risk is the fact that there's a bus stop basically right there as soon as you exit the slip lane. So two different ways that you could have done it. Like I would suggest, because you kind of identified that as a risk here as well, the angle of the slip lane, that you'd have a separate finding as well, just to do with that slip angle entry as well. But I really like the way that you've phrased that also. Thank you very much for sharing that. just seen a question come through. Would you also reference different findings to each other in an audit? Yes, we regularly do that. You can say refer to audit number 3, and it could just to show that those two relate to each other, or it's just like a, an extension of a previous audit finding that it's already been mentioned. So all of those audit findings were very well written, and the recommendations seem to be pertinent to what was being discussed and would help to mitigate those risks. The other thing that we would like to see is, with all your recommendations, just whether they are a primary treatment or a supporting treatment, but appreciate the time constraints in today's session. You will have an opportunity within your assignment to actually do this same exercise. So it's good to see that you're all already on the on the right path, and it's looking very positive. The next part of today's session is just to go through finalizing your certification, which I'm going to hand over to Kathy, who's going to have a little chat through that. But any last minute questions, feel free to send them through to the chat and we'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Max, and thanks everyone for getting involved. That was terrific. So what we have here is we're in the road safety audit course, and we're in module 5. So there is a quiz, the final quiz this week, and it is a bit more than just a single Wally question. So there's usually the 10 multiple choice questions in there. That's where we will put the recording up at the end of today's session. So you have another week to complete your road safety audit site visit and to write up your report. So just a reminder, that's here, and you add your submission via PDF. If you're doing it in small groups, you can do that. You can all go and do your site visit together and you can discuss it, but you do need to write up your own report and submit your own report. So you can't just copy another person's, if that makes sense. It is due next Thursday, and we will be marking them after then. So that's a recap on that. Now, to complete the course, you need to make sure you've done all of the quizzes and have an average of 80% across all the quizzes, that you have done your research assignment way back here in Module 1, and you've received a score for that, and then also your site visit and report write-up. The last thing that we ask you to do is give us some feedback on the course. So a short multiple choice type feedback form should only take a couple of minutes. And then once all of those things have been done and your assignment has been marked, your RSA certificate will appear here, and you'll be able to download that and you've got an electronic copy of it. What we'll also do after your assignments are in and been marked, then we will also send you a hard copy as well as any prizes. And there's been a lot of prizes this round, so exceptional group. And so you'll get that in the actual post in the next 2 weeks to 4 years or something. It takes sometimes. No, you'll get it soon. So I think that's about it. Do we have any final questions or comments or anything at all?
I'm going to take that as a good sign that everything has been communicated very well. Thank you very much, Kathy. And thanks to everyone for attending today's session and all the sessions that we've had. It's been a wonderful group. Great to see the engagements. Awesome to see that the next group of road safety auditors are fully switched on. They know it's a safe system. They know the ins and outs of identifying risk and being able to gauge the level of risk. So it's very exciting to see. And if you do have any further questions, welcome to email the training team, myself or Ken, and we'll be happy to help you out. Hope you have a lovely day. And yeah, that's it from me.
There was only one question in quiz 4. That is correct. So there was only one question in quiz 4, but there'll be more questions in quiz 5 today. But yeah, no, thanks again, everyone. Happy Road Safety Week, and see you next time.
Fantastic. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.